Happy Wednesday, everybody. You know what day that is? The Motor City Mad Mouth Show. Yes, I am the Motor City Mad Mouth, and I am pleased to be joined by my colleague, Adam Lichtenstein. And Adam and I work together at the Miami Hurricanes. Every time I have an opportunity to bring Adam on the broadcast, it is a treat because this guy is as classy as it gets. Adam, welcome to the Motor City Mad Mouth Show.
Thanks for having me back on. Glad to be back.
Oh, we're glad to have you, man. You are great. Every time I need something, this guy here, no problem. I got you covered. All right. Well, you know what? Since it is Motor City Man Mouse Show, we try to keep things a bit more personable. Other ones shows are what they are because they're all nuts and bolts. We have a lot of those too in this broadcast. But Adam, go ahead, introduce yourself. Give me some background information, where you're from, the places that you've worked. Floor is yours.
Sure. So, my name's Adam Lichtenstein. I cover the Hurricanes for the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. I've been on that beat since 2022. Before that, I covered high school sports down here in South Florida for both the Sun-Sentinel and before that, the Palm Beach Post. Went to the University of Florida, so I am a Gator, even though I cover the Hurricanes. Sometimes that gets people a little tripped up. But went to University of Florida, worked at the student paper there, covered the Gators in their worst season in 30 years. And then, I covered some MLB, and then, like I said, got to doing some preps. Like I said, been on this beat for a couple years. Definitely seen some interesting football the last two seasons. Hopefully some better football this year.
All right, so you're a Florida native, right?
I was born in New York, Long Island, moved down to Florida when I was 5 years old, like half the other people who live here in South Florida. New York native, mostly fan of New York sports teams, even though I am rocking the vintage Marlins cap today. They're 0-7, so not doing so hot, but my Yankees are 6-1, so I like that.
Yeah, I really feel bad for you. My Detroit Tigers by heart are 4-0 with two rainouts, so 4-0-2, and they're playing the Mets. So I got to ask you, August 31st, when we go up to Gainesville, what's it going to be like when the Canes take on the Gators? Are you going to be? Because I've had to deal with this before when the University of South Florida, which is my alma mater, and I have to kind of internalize everything about the mixed emotions. But guess what? You get to do it. And of course, the Canes do play USF later this year. So you get it first and I get it second. What's it going to be like on August 31st?
No mixed emotions. I was talking about this with somebody else on another podcast earlier today, but it's like, I don't root for anyone. I root for an easy game story to write that I'm not writing to the last possible second like I was a few times last year. I'm excited to go back to Gainesville. I haven't been in about 6 years now. Excited to check out some old restaurants that I like, some Gainesville staples like Satchel's and stuff. A great pizza place. Highly recommend it. I'm excited to be in the swamp again because it's really an electric stadium. Like I tell people, like the stadium seats 90,000 and the town only has 110,000 people in it. Like the whole place shuts down for a game day. If you haven't been to a game in Gainesville or any other big college town, whether it's Tallahassee or any of the towns around the SEC or even in like the ACC, you got like Virginia Tech and Blacksburg or Clemson, the whole city shuts down. Everything is based around the university. Like it's the thing to do, which is really cool. I know a lot of Hurricanes fans that like to talk about how there's nothing to do in places like Gainesville or Tuscaloosa, but in those towns, the college is the thing to do. It's the thing to you go to the games. That's what you do. So it'll be a good time, and I'm really excited to for the season to get started and to watch that game.
Yeah, I had my Florida State fix last year, and I've been to Gainesville once, but I'm looking forward to going back. As a member of the Miami Hurricanes media, it'll be pretty neat to get out there, hopefully later on this year. So, again, the way I've always treated these things, though, is you can't lose either way. I mean, if the team you're writing for, okay, you're going to have a positive story. And if the other team, which is your alma mater, wins, deep down inside, you're going to feel pretty good because, after all, if you got a championship ring like me called a class ring, you feel pretty good about it. All right, let's go to the chat room. I told you you're a popular individual here, Mr. Lichtenstein. All right, what's going on? Lichtenstein, Joshua Bernstein, he wants to know what's going on. And we got Duncan Lozinski on the show. And do you No Canes, Superfan Matt, and Andy Seegerman.
No, I don't. I don't know them. What's going on? Well, I got a new puppy last week, so that's taken up a lot of my time. She's adorable, little Jack Russell Terrier mix that we rescued from St. Croix. So that's been dominating my time. A lot of walks, a lot of playtime and stuff.
It's all right. Nothing wrong. I got 2 cats. I don't have to take them very far. All they do is meow, headbutt, and eat, not necessarily in that order. and I call my two, okay, the two beggars. I mean, all Bucky and Boots are beggars if I ever saw one. But anyways, all right. So let's turn it over to the Hurricanes off season. First of all, why don't you highlight some of the departures? We know Tylervandyke was one of them. He ends up going to Wisconsin. But were there any other departures that stood out, and how? And when you look at those particular departures, how badly are they going to sting?
Well, I don't think any Hurricanes fans are going to be pining for Tylervandyke, and I say that as someone who likes Tyler as a person. You know, had a lot of good conversations with him over the last few years. But the reason why no one's going to miss him is because Camward is in town. He transferred in from Washington State after considering the NFL draft for a couple weeks, and he's been just doing very well in camp. Rave reviews from everyone, from players, from coaches. He seems to really be a quality quarterback. He did very well at Washington State, and he seems to be a very good leader. He brought in, I think, a bunch of the skill players on offense to watch the Super Bowl at his place. He took the offensive lineman out for a big dinner, which I can only imagine the bill on that, because offensive linemen, of course, like me, love to eat. So he seems like I don't think it's going to sting too much. Lost Tylervandyke. The one that I think will probably kind of hurt is Colbyyoung transferring to Georgia.
Okay.
Very talented wide receiver, very good, tall guy on the outside. And the Hurricanes need a guy like that. And then right now they don't really have one. We've got Isaiah Horton, who I think is like, off the top of my head, I think is 6'2". I could be wrong on that, but I think he's 6'2", so he's got some height, but he's not that 6'4", 6'5" guy who can go up and get a ball, on a fade route in the end zone or something. So I think that's the thing, and that's why Georgia wants him. He's a talented guy. So I think that's probably the loss that'll hurt the most.
All right. So the only loss that you feel is Colbyyoung. That's the biggest one. Okay.
Yeah, and then, also they lost some depth at defensive back, and that they're a little short at that position right now. I think like Devontae Brown, who didn't excel last year in his 1 year at Miami. He's up at FSU now. But what would sting is if he's able to sway his brother, Damari Brown, the younger brother, to also transfer to FSU, because, like I said, the Hurricanes are kind of short on cornerbacks right now, and Damari Brown's very talented and looking to take a big jump going into his sophomore year. So if the Hurricanes were to lose him too, that would be a big issue.
Right. So, but the one that stands out in your eyes is Colbyyoung, and the newcomer that stands out is pretty much Cam Ward. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go to the chat room because Joshua Bernstein's on a roll. So let's hit you with the first one. Question for Adam: when will the Canes finally have a good season?
So I guess it depends on what your definition of good is. Is 10-2 good enough? Is an ACC title good enough? Is 9-3 good enough? Or are we talking, because like the Hurricane, and I don't mean that sarcastically, because the Hurricanes have a history of being an incredible program, where the history and the legacy is you want to go undefeated and compete for a national title. And I don't know if the Hurricanes are going to do that this year. I do think they should be good enough to compete for an ACC title. I do think they should be good enough to win 10 games. And if they're able to do that, they probably make a 12-team playoff, because we have a 12-team playoff this year. They should be good enough to make that. And I think that's a big step forward. They went 5-7 2 years ago, 7-6 with the bowl game last year. So if they make that next step, that leap, and go 10-2, make the ACC title game for, I think, only the second time since they joined the conference, that's a significant step. And I think that qualifies as a good year. And I think they could very well do that this year.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, let's go over that. So what would you say the record that you anticipate they could probably? I'm just curious.
I mean, there's still so much time between now and the season. There's still a whole other transfer portal window coming up later this month. So like, teams aren't complete yet. So not only are the Hurricanes probably not complete yet, but their opponents aren't complete yet. But their schedule's not that difficult. They play a lot of teams that should be decent, but not a lot of teams that should be great. So I think they could very, very not easily, but they could definitely go 10-2, and I think that's a very good season for them.
10-2. You really believe they're that good?
I think so. I was doing a position by position kind of look
Wow.
about a week ago, and I was looking at like each position and how they were doing in spring, and there were very few positions where I was like, yeah, they need more talent there. It's like running back, kind of, because they're kind of hurt there right now. If everyone's healthy at that position, then they really just need a little bit more depth and defensive back. Like I mentioned, the cornerbacks, they need some depth there behind guys like Damari Brown and Daryl Porter. And then safety, they have to replace camkinchens and James Williams, who are both going to the NFL draft. So those are the question marks. And if they can address that in the portal, then I think they're in a really good spot. Or if they can find players who are already on the roster, maybe a guy like Jadis Richards steps up at cornerback, or Jaden Harris at safety. If one of those guys steps up, um, it goes a long way towards plugging those holes that are on the roster right now.
All right. You know what? I had an opportunity to talk to Xavierrestrepo. I've never seen a guy more classier than Xavierrestrepo. Gives you his time. He's a heck of a player, too. And when I went there, he was scouting that pro day pretty good, so he knows what he's in for. What are your thoughts about the Big X?
I love X. I think he's a very good player, but I think he's very underrated. I've actually known him since he was in high school when I was covering preps. He played for St. Thomas Aquinas and then Deerfield Beach. So I've watched him now for basically the majority of his career, high school and college career. I think he's a really good player. He doesn't have that talent, like the standout talent. He doesn't have the size. He doesn't have blazing speed.
Right.
But what he does have is he's very intelligent. He's an excellent route runner. He's got very good hands. And
Right.
Miami did not have an incredible passing game last year, and he still got 1,000 yards, and that's impressive. He's only the sixth receiver to ever record a 1,000-yard receiving season. So
Right.
that tells you how good he is. I think he's underrated by a lot of people. Hopefully less so this year, but I think he's a very good player, and like you said, very smart, very well spoken, like thoughtful. Really, I mean, like he's not really a kid anymore because he's in his early 20s, but great dude. Like, I really like covering him, and I think he's set for a really, really good year with Cam Ward at quarterback.
Let me tell you something. Deerfield Beach High School produces a lot of great prospects. We don't have enough show to get into them all, but I'll tell you, he's just the latest in a long line of them. So I guess that leads me to Josh Berstein's next question. Do you think Xavier will make it to the NFL?
I think he definitely can. He's got a protege right in front of him, a guy like Braxton Berrios. He may not be a 1,000-yard receiver in the NFL, but I think there's definitely a chance he finds his way onto a roster after this year. Wouldn't surprise me in the least bit.
Well, I think what I found impressive about him at the pro day was here's a guy that's watching everybody there, right? Okay. But I know I'm like you. I've talked to him a lot of times, and he's a great kid. He really is. And he's looking at the pro day like, okay, let me get a feel for this thing because I'm going to be doing this next year.
Right.
So not only is he a good player, but he seems like to me he's a very intelligent player.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And he's been a leader on the team now for a couple of years. Like, and there's the coaching staff loves him. I'm sure he's like a coach in the meeting room and stuff because he's been there. I think he's going into his 5th year now. Like,
right.
He's just a really, really, or maybe his 4th year. I don't remember off the top of my head, but just a really, really good all around player. And he's been one of the highlights of spring. Watching him go against the transfer defensive back Nish Powell. They've had some really good battles. He's made some excellent catches during the media viewing sessions, and I think him and Ward are going to be a really, really strong team.
Yeah, Cam Ward, I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to getting to watch this guy play. I really am. All right, let's go to the coach. We have to. How important of a year is it for Coach Mario Cristobal? I know he's in year 3, and what did he sign, an 8 or 10-year deal? I'm trying to remember.
10 years,
right.
I think $80 million. So got some time on that contract. But
yeah,
I mean, it's a big year because it's mostly his players now. The first year you say, okay, it's mostly players Manny Diaz recruited, and maybe Diaz wasn't a great recruiter like Mario Cristobal is.
Right.
Okay, they go 5-7, which is disappointing. I mean, it's disappointing no matter how you slice it up. But okay, move on to last year. They're 7-6. A lot of disappointing stuff. You have the Georgia Tech loss, which is just still one of the worst losses I've ever seen. Just there's no sugarcoating it. And I think Mario Cristobal will probably tell you the same thing. It was just a brain fart from him, from Shannon Dawson. They don't want to attribute blame to any one person, but just a terrible way to lose a game. But you look at every game they lost; they were pretty much in every game. And I don't really think about the Pinstripe Bowl too much. It's the bowl game. A bunch of players opted out. It's a wash to me. I don't really take much from it. But you look at their 5 regular season losses, and they were all pretty close. They were in all those games until the end. I think they only lost one by more than 10 points, and that wasn't at the NC State game, which was just a weird game where it was close until the very end. So they were close in every game. This year, like I said, you want to see them take that next step and start to win, start to to accomplish things. And I think Mario Cristobal's flipped the roster enough. He's brought in he has a really strong offensive line, which is his thing, being a former offensive lineman. The offensive line is strong. They've got talent at the skill positions. They've got a very good quarterback. So I wouldn't say it's like a make or break year, because if they go 8-4, he's not getting fired or anything like that. If they kind of fall below expectations, he's not going to get fired or anything. But this is a year where you want to see that next step, that progress, that build into a team that can accomplish things, a team that can compete for the conference title. And if they're not there, then the questions start to get louder. Because if he's not there now with Cam Ward, this guy, a borderline NFL quarterback who will probably go to the NFL next year, if you can't get there now, then what are you still looking for? What's missing? And that's a question that not only fans and media members would be asking. That's a question that recruits are going to start asking and saying, hey, we believed you when you said you needed to build to something, but it looked like you were there and you're not. So that's where maybe recruiting starts taking a hit. And if your recruiting starts taking a hit, then you can't build, that kind of program you want to build. Because Mario wants to build a program. He coached under Nick Saban, so that's his. That's who he wants to build a program into. Whether Miami can ever, rebuild into a program like Nick Saban's Alabama is, another question. But that's what he's aiming for. And if you don't get things rolling downhill, then it just gets that much harder, So I think this is a big year. I wouldn't quite say make or break, but it's a very important season.
Fair enough. Well, you brought Manny Diaz, and guess what? Now he's a coach for the Duke Blue Devils. So therefore, and I've always thought Manny was a great defensive guy. But what are your thoughts about Manny Diaz being back in the ACC, knowing that we're going to face him again? That there's going to be a little bit of a rivalry for no reason because of the head coach situation.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you think back to how Manny Diaz was ousted at UM, where basically there was very public flirting and courting of Mario Cristobal, while Manny Diaz is still like the head coach at Miami and still recruiting for Miami. So very weird situation. I can't imagine a situation where Manny Diaz doesn't have hard feelings about that. But I will say, if that game is at Hard Rock, if Miami loses that game, the vibes are going to be just horrible. It's gonna be bad. But I do think, I think the Hurricanes should win that game. I think Manny Diaz might struggle a bit at Duke. They lost some players. They lost their head coach his first year as a head coach at Duke. So I don't know how good Duke's gonna be. But like you said, Manny Diaz, great defensive coach. So might not be like a pushover game, or it might be. We'll see.
All right. Well, you know what? Now you led me to another question. Okay. What are your thoughts about the ACC expanding, getting 3 new teams? I think Cal, Stanford, and SMU are joining our group.
I love it because I've never been to California before, and I'll get to go to Berkeley this year. So I love it. That's fun for me. Do I think it's like the saving grace for the ACC as a major conference? Probably not, but it's fun. Never been to Dallas or Berkeley or Palo Alto, so sure, why not?
Hey, one of these days when you and I go on a road trip together, we'll hang out. We'll see what we can do. I've been to all 50 states. I've been to a lot of different places.
Nice.
But I will make a prediction with you though, Adam. I do believe some way, shape, or form, Florida State and Clemson are going to get out, and I wouldn't be surprised if Florida State and Clemson wind up in the Big Ten.
Yeah, you're probably right. It's probably really only a question of when and not if. I mean, you can't. It's really difficult to keep a conference together when those two, like the two biggest members or highest profile members, are in like open revolt. But I think the Big Ten, you're probably right. That's probably where they end up. The question is, does the conference fall apart after that, or do they kind of like handle things? Do they end up being the Pac-12 or the Big 12? Do they fall apart, or do they kind of reconstitute themselves into like a smaller conference, but still, relevant?
All right. So could you ever see the Miami Hurricanes ever in the Big Ten?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely could see them there. They're an AAU school, like a prestigious academic school, like a lot of the schools in the Big Ten. So that helps them in their favor. You get FSU, maybe they, want to bring them in as a rival. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Miami's been very open publicly, at least, about their support for the ACC.
Right.
So I don't see it happening anytime soon. So I think the words that Dan Radakovich used when I asked him about this in December was they were an interested observer. So they're going to see how these lawsuits go with FSU and Clemson, which I think might not be the worst strategy, because they'll see how these go. They don't take the PR hit of dramatically realigning college football. They don't spend the money and public relations stuff on the lawsuits themselves, and they see how it goes. If the ACC falls apart, very real chance they end up in the Big Ten. And I was talking about this with Manny Navarro from The Athletic earlier, they could stay in the ACC, because if you look at when Miami was at its peak, they were either independent or in the Big East. And the Big East, before it eventually fell apart as a football conference, was not an amazing football conference. They were the big fish in a very small pond, and maybe they want to do that again with the ACC and basically make the ACC their conference, because everyone thought when they joined the ACC, like, it was expected that Miami would be a constant conference title contender, and they haven't been. They've been pretty mediocre for 20 years. But if they continue building the way they're building and become a strong program again, they could dominate the ACC. And even if the ACC is a second-tier conference to the Big Ten and SEC, if they get two teams into a 12 or 14 team playoff, Miami could be one of those teams every year and be in the playoff every year. So as long as the money is not too insanely different, there is a possibility they could thrive in a weakened ACC. There's no guarantee of that, and the money difference might end up being far too much for them to overcome, but we just don't know because it hasn't happened yet.
All right, there are some interesting questions in the chat room, so I'm going to bring them up, and maybe you can. Do you know Ken Calhoun?
Can't say I do.
All right, Joshua. Now, here's an interesting one. We'll play the name game a little bit. The NHL. We got camward as an NHL goaltender.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Canadians, right?
Yeah, right. I believe so. Who is the other poser that you guys are talking about?
When I talk, it's funny because I usually try to go with what I like players who have, like, if they go by their name's Robert, or let's say if they go by Rob or Robbie or Robert, and I typically go with what they use on social media. But Cameron Ward uses both. I think on his Twitter he's Cameron, and on his Instagram he's Cam. So whenever we get a chance to talk to him, I'll ask him what he prefers. So Cameron Ward. The important thing is Miami still has an abundance of Cams. They lost Cam Kitchens. They bring in Cam Ward. They still have Cam McCormick. So team with a bunch of Cams, a bunch of Elijahs too.
So, all right, I hope I answered your question, Josh, that you don't know Ken Calhoun, right?
No, I don't.
All right, there you go, Josh. All right, and let's see, Josh. Let's see, we got him. All right, well, you know what? Let's have a little bit of fun with this. I know I have a couple other Canes questions. What about the Miami Marlins? Oh my God, 0-7. That is tough stuff.
Brutal.
First team after a playoff that has ever lost 7 in a row. I couldn't believe when I heard.
I didn't know that. Yikes!
I didn't either.
Great. Like I said, I got my. Like I said, I like the Marlins. I grew up in South Florida, so I do root for them. But I'm a Yankees fan, so they're 6-1, and I'm very happy about that.
And D-Low 77. I'm not ignoring the chat room. Our goal here is to stay with the flow of the show and incorporate the chat comments as we're able to do that. So there you go. Joshua Dorr. Okay, Scott, can you send that the link? I don't know what he's talking about there. All right, a couple more things I want to get around to. We were both at the Hurricanes Pro Day. What stood out for you?
Well, I'm always interested to see how Cam Kitchens does. He improved his 40 times. He didn't run a particularly great 40 time at the NFL Combine. I think he ran like a 4.64. I think I got one off the top of my head, so someone can double check that. But he ran like a 4.6 something at the Combine, which was not great. I think it maybe docked him a little bit on draft boards. Cam Kitchen's game isn't really speed, so it's not the single most important thing. But he did improve his 40 time at Pro Day. I think he ran like a 4.54 or a 4.56, which is good. But the thing that really stood out to me was Tyler Harrell. And Tyler Harrell did not do much for the Hurricanes last year. I think he had one catch for like 7 yards. But everyone knew he had blazing speed and just never had a chance to really use it, whether it's because the coaches didn't trust him for some reason, they didn't want to get him on the field that much. We just didn't see him. But he ran like a 4.28, I think, which is blazing fast, like incredibly fast, like not far off the combine record, which was just set this year by Xavier Worthy, which I think he ran a 4.21. So not that much slower than the record time for the 40 time at the combine. So maybe that helps him get on a roster. I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but it might help him, earn a spot on a practice squad, or maybe get on a team that needs a kick returner or a punt returner or something like that, because he's just so fast. That's probably the thing that the number that stood out to me the most was his 40 time.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and put this comment up from Joshua Dorr, 100 greatest plays in Miami Hurricanes history. Number one, Calhoun deflects Nebraska 2-point conversion for first championship, wins its first ever national. Now we know who he is. All right, good.
There you go. Joshua. Yeah,
and let's go.
I gotta rewatch the U documentary then.
Oh, there you go. All right, Will Vogel actually popping in. Says, I'm a Yankee fan too. Let's go Yanks. And we'll go back to Joshua Dorr again. Thanks for doing some research, Joshua. Much appreciated. Miami rover back Kenny Calhoun deflected Turner Gill pass, but the ball fell incomplete, accompanied by the roar of the QB. And that was it. The Hurricanes captured the first national championship. And Joshua Dorr, you know who called that game? If you don't, it doesn't matter. Doncriqui did for NBC Sports, who covered an awful lot.
I was about 10 years away from being born, so I did not watch that game.
Oh, were you really? Yeah, and I was.
So.
And at that time, I was going to Broward Community College South, wrapping up my associate's degree. So are we really going to talk about age difference between the two of us? Because with the maturity that you had, you could have fooled me.
A couple of years.
But Doncriqui, if you ever want to find out, this guy, he covered a lot of Orange Bowls for sure. And you can see him probably on ESPN Classic. He was that good. Let me tell you an interesting story about an Orange Bowl that I remember when Iowa was down against USC, and Mattcassel didn't get a lot of playing time. I talked to him on the field, and lo and behold, he wound up playing in the NFL. So you can find these hidden gems anywhere, even if they're not getting playing time.
For sure. Yeah, I regret that I never got a chance to see a game at the Orange Bowl, because growing up, like my parents being from New York, and also not having gone to college, they couldn't care less about college sports. They didn't follow it at all. Didn't really know much about it, and so we were a pro sports family. So we watched a lot of pro football, but by then the Dolphins were playing at Hard Rock, Pro Player, Joe Robbie, take your pick on what you want to call it.
Right.
They were already playing there. So I went there plenty of times, but I never went to the Orange Bowl to watch the Hurricanes.
Oh, I did. I covered them back then. It was a good experience too. The one guy I worked with many years ago was Ron Steiner, one of the best PR guys you'll ever meet. And he's actually in my book as well. Candy, while we're through the halfway mark or just about there, why don't you give us a break here and then we'll go ahead and continue talking.
So if you see that little red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, please hit it, subscribe, like us, share us, tell all your friends about us. If you like podcasts, we are available audio on iHeartRadio, Google, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast. We have a website, www.southfloridatribune.com. If you'd like to sponsor a show or advertise, call Scott, 954-304-4941. Scott has a book. It's in the upper right-hand corner, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and soon to be Apple and Google. Back to you, Scott.
Thank you very much, Candy. All right. Well, as we are just about either at the halfway point or near the end of the show, just so to show you, Adam, when you and I get on here, things just flow very nicely because we both cover this team.
Yeah,
And
my wife says I'm a yapper. I love to talk.
Oh yeah, well that's okay. We'll give you plenty of opportunities during the season too. Don't worry, but we'll put you on fire in Florida. Today is your opportunity to go to a much different type of audience, and I like to bring some of the people that I know that belong in the Motor City Mad Mouse Show, and I'm just glad you're the latest to make it on here. All right, let's talk about what Miami Hurricanes players have the best chance of getting drafted in a few weeks in Detroit. I will be at the NFL draft.
So yeah, I think Camkinchens probably number one. All-American at Miami. Had a decent year last year. Sorry, I'm about to sneeze. Fighting off a sneeze here, but I think he has a good chance of being drafted. Very high chance. James Williams is his partner at safety. Very toolsy, talented guy with a 5-star prospect coming out of American Heritage. Another guy who I watched in high school, just a really, really talented player. I don't know if he's going to stick at safety. Might depend on the team that takes him. He could also play linebacker. So I think he'll get picked. Good chance you see Leonard Taylor, defensive tackle, hear his name called. Very talented guy, also a former 5-star prospect. And then trying to think about Matt Lee, the center, who he played 1 year at Miami and had a very, very good season last year after transferring from UCF. And then his partner on the offensive line, Xavierrestrepo Cohen, the guard, he'll also likely get picked. Really solid player. Not like probably won't be the first, couple guards off the board, but he'll probably hear his name called as well.
Very good. So there you have it, folks. I'm here with Adam Lichtenstein of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. Glad to have him on here tonight. And coming up after Motor City Mad Mouse Show, we have a very good show with the Sports Exchange. So we'll be talking basketball on that show. So any other closing thoughts that we haven't talked about with the Miami Hurricanes that people can look forward to?
Spring football is coming to a close soon. Got another, week and a half or so, 5 more practices. Got a spring game coming up next Saturday. That'll be interesting. They're playing it at Cobb Stadium, the soccer stadium on UM's campus. So who says they don't have an on-campus stadium? That'll be interesting.
Oh, they're not moving up north this year at all?
No, they're playing it, limited crowd. I think the stadium seats like 500 people. They'll probably bring in some bleachers to expand it a little bit. So small stadium, should be interesting to see. Looking forward, we haven't had a chance to talk to Cam Ward yet this year. So hopefully we get a chance to talk to him before the spring game. And then it's, baseball season. Hurricanes have had kind of an up and down year so far, the baseball team. But hopefully we'll be able to get out to Mark White Field for a little bit and catch them a little bit more once spring football's over.
Yeah, I remember covering the team when Ron Frazier was there back then. Again, I'm showing the age card now. So, have you had a chance to get down to Coral Gables? You go there every day of the week, or how often do you get down there?
Not every day. Right now, usually about 2 times a week. They have practice like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday right now. So typically go down, watch, a little bit of practice, do a few interviews and then head back. I live in Delray Beach. So, depending on what time of day it is, my drive could be anywhere from an hour to 2.5 hours. So, motor my way back north and up 995, take the express lane.
There you go. Yeah, I hear you. Well, you're not that far up the road from I am, being at Deerfield Beach. So meanwhile, once again, Adam, it's great to have you on the show. But before I let you go, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, at AB Lichtenstein. Post all the time on there about not just the Hurricanes, just whatever I'm watching or reading or anything, just whatever's happening in the world. You can read all my stuff at sunsentinel.com.
Very good. Well, once again, Adam, I want to thank you very much for coming on the Motor City Mad Mouse Show. We'll bring on Fire Up Florida as we get through the season. But meanwhile, this is just a great opportunity for everybody to look at you, get to know you a little bit on a much different level than we normally do. And I want to thank you very much for joining us. You're, to me, one of the best colleagues I've ever worked with. And when I write my second book, Lessons on the Microphone Part 2, you will be in it. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Adam, for being here. And I'll catch you. Look forward to seeing you real soon. Thank you very much, Adam.
Sounds good.
So that concludes this edition of Motor City Mad Mouth. Coming up next, the Sports Exchange at approximately 9 o'clock.